Alright guys, so obviously I'm not there. And some of you guys aren't either. You're either with a sub or you're in testing right now. And I know a lot of you guys could use some help on these poems, so I'm really not feeling well, so I'm about to do the most ratchet thing ever by making this video. Because I'm going to be snotty and sniffling and everything else, but I really do love you guys, and I don't want you to feel like you're confused, okay? So I'm going to read this poem with you guys. I'm going to discuss it as if we would in class, although it's going to be all one-sided because it's just going to be me. But hopefully you guys can, at least get some information from this. Sorry, I'm so congested. Okay. So this is Rabbit is Up to Tricks by Harjo. So this is the second poem. Right, let me see. Yep, the second poem in our group here. It comes from the book Conflict Resolution for Holy Beings on page 8 and 9. But you guys only have a few poems. But anyway, so I'm going to read it with you guys. You guys should follow along. I'll kind of talk about all the different things that we should be answering in our 7 things. And hopefully by the end of this, you'll be like, oh my gosh, I am so empowered now. And I'm equipped and I can do well. And it's going to be great. Okay? And then if you're in testing, it's great because you didn't really... you get this video too. So you guys can just watch this after and be like, wow, I know what class is about. I'm not lost. Okay, ready? Rabbit is at the Tricks by Harjo. Left-hand sides first. In a world long before this one, there was enough for everyone, until somebody got out of line. We heard it was Rabbit, fooling around clay in the wind. Everybody was tired of his trick, and no one would play with him. He was lonely in this world, so Rabbit thought to make a person. And when he blew into the mouth that crude figure to see what would happen, the clayman stood up. Rabbit showed the clayman how to steal a chicken, and the clayman obeyed. And then Rabbit showed him how to steal corn, and the clayman obeyed. And then he showed him how to steal someone else's wife, and the clayman obeyed. Rabbit felt important and powerful. The clayman felt important and powerful. And once the clayman started, he could not stop. And once he took that chicken, he wanted all the chickens. And once he took that corn, he wanted all the corn. And once he took that wife, he wanted all the wives. He was unsatiable. That word unsatiable means that he couldn't be satisfied. Then he had a taste of gold, and he wanted all the gold. Then it was land and anything else he saw. His wanting only made him want more. Soon it was countries, and then it was trade. The wanting infected the earth. We lost track of the purpose and reason for life. We began to forget our songs. We forgot our stories. We could no longer see or hear our ancestors, or talk with each other across the kitchen table. Forests were being mowed down all over the world, and Rabbit had no place to play. Rabbit's trick had backfired. Rabbit tried to call the clayman back. When the clayman wouldn't listen, Rabbit realized he'd made a clayman with no ears. So good, right? Okay, so let's talk about these different things on your list. So the first thing is, for all of them, is to summarize it, right? So don't be confused by race method and summarizing. Summarizing doesn't really work very well with the race method. Just because the explanation part, you don't really explain the summary. It's kind of, you just summarize it. So on your test, don't forget, you will have a question that says, what is the race method used for? And many students get confused and they say, oh, it's used for a summary. Don't answer that, okay? So the answer is that it's used to help you answer more fully and completely, okay? Because it's like a holistic answer. So summary, we're just going to remember these parts. In a summary, you want the first line to include the title and the author. So in number 1, you should write, Rabbit is up to tricks, and I'm going to put quotation marks around it instead of italicized because this is a poem and it's a shorter piece of work, so you put quotations. So you put Rabbit is up to tricks by Harjo is about, and then you just want to go in order. What's happening? We're not analyzing anything. We're not talking about what it could mean and what it could symbolize, things like that. We're literally just saying kind of what's going on. So what I do for that, particularly because this is a little bit longer of a poem, not like super long, it's 2 pages, but I just kind of take every 5 lines or so, and I'm thinking, okay, what's happening? Let me put that in a sentence. So I start out with saying something like, remember when I add our main characters in the beginning, and the main conflict, and stuff like that, because it's telling a story, like a parable. But Rabbit, a trickster, is lonely, so he decides to make a clay person. The next set of 5 lines, I summarized it by saying, Rabbit teaches the clayman to steal, and he obeys. Clayman loses control and cannot be satiated. Or I put satisfied, actually, because I don't really use the word satiated very often. And it's okay if you guys paraphrase your own stuff, too. Then on the right side now, toward the top, those 5 lines or so I put, begins by stealing physical material. Then it affects all the people's morals and steals their values. That's the next 5 lines. And the final 5 lines, Rabbit's plan backfired because the claimant had no ears to listen. And I'm quoting the word ears because it's probably maybe not something that I thought, or maybe I'm thinking there is some more symbolism there, but I won't dive into that yet. It's just a summary. So that's my summary. Just no, analysis, nothing else. Just a summary. Alright, number 2 asks you for symbolism. It says 2 parts. 1, what did rabbits symbolize? It says according to the chart. I used to give you guys a chart, and I just don't anymore. The chart was a little too complex for what I wanted. Basically, all I wanted you to glean from that is that often a rabbit will symbolize a trickster animal, and I want you guys to remember back to like 2 weeks ago when we were doing our lessons on the different types of myths and stuff like that, and how there are trickster animals here. So that was part A of number 2. Part B says, and think even more deeply. Is this really about rabbits and corn and chickens and clay people? Or do you think these represent something else? And explain. So remember, we're going to do our race method from 2 to 7, okay? So I want to say rabbits symbolize, which is going to be red, because we're restating it. Orange is going to be trickster animals. And then I'm going to use some quotes and cite the lines, and then I'm going to explain it. So I could say they symbolize trickster animals. For instance, rabbit teaches the clayman to steal. And that would be lines, let's see, that starts in line 10, and it ends in line like 19 or 17. So that's all going to be in green, both the quote itself and the citation parentheses where you put lines and lines there. And then in blue is the explanation. So since he's teaching them how to steal, he becomes a part of the archetype trickster just because he's not doing anything kind. Or you could say since he's like kind of perpetuating more evil or something like that. Really, any of those things would work. Whatever you feel the explanation, that would actually be like, obviously makes sense, Okay. Then when we're talking about what's going on here, well, it's a parable, right? So there's these, we see like when we were doing our myths earlier and when we have fables and stuff like that, these aren't about like, 3 little pigs aren't 3 little pigs, and we don't have this idea of like, I don't know, Little Red Riding Hood and this wolf because we're afraid that wolves are going to come talk to us or something like that. These are supposed to represent people, right? So rabbits, here it seems like this is symbolism. The clay man isn't just some clay figure. I mean, we were made of the dust of the earth is what our common belief usually is anyway. So this idea that clay man probably represents and symbolizes humanity. That the rabbit could also symbolize either an evil figure or even just others that are passing on that kind of evil desires to us, things like that. Okay, so we're getting to number 3 now. It says figurative language. This is what we usually do. When we're on the board, we're just like, hey guys, find any figurative language that you see, any personification, things like that. This poem is going to be full of personification. I do want you to not find just 3 personification examples. However, you can repeat at least 2 of them be personification and the third one be something else. So our red part is going to say one example of figurative language is, and then our answer could be personification. That's going to be our orange. Our green, remember, is going to be both the quote and the citation. So the green, you could say something like, let me find some personification. Line 5, he was lonely in this world. Or line 6, so rabbit thought to make a person. So when it's talking about he was lonely in the world, it's talking about rabbit. Pretty much every line is going to be personification. So I want you guys to find those things. You're going to find personification everywhere. And then maybe some other things that you might not notice. We see that repeated phrase over and over. Rabbit showed him this. Rabbit showed, rabbit showed, rabbit showed. And then the other NAFREV, clayman obeyed, clayman obeyed, clayman obeyed. And then if I'm going to explain that one, because remember the blue part is going to be your explanation. And explanations are not telling me the definition. Remember that, okay? You want to explain why is it important, make some connections there. You could say something like, this reveals instances of repeated greed. It perpetuates like evil. So it's not like he just messes up once. This isn't some poem about how he messes up once and then now there's evil in the world. This is repeated greed. This is perpetuating evil. So you see that going on. Alright, elements of myth. So we see a few things. Remember we talked about how myths and fables and folk tales and things like that kind of share some similar things, like being told verbally. We don't really have that here, but we do have the idea of like their characters. The characters can be animals or gods. Who's the character here? Write that down. That would be for number 4, where your elements of myths are. Then we could talk about kind of the creation part and the trickster part. So rabbit being both a trickster animal and he's creating Clayman. So you have both those elements there, which often happen in our myths. Let me think of a few others. It tells a moral, and we have some values there, like songs, stories, ancestors, nature. Also just the idea of like things starting in the beginning of time. So I think that's in the very beginning here. Yep, and the very first line it says, in the world long before this one, there's enough for everyone, blah, blah. So that idea of in the world long before this one, that's going to show us that, hey, this long ago stuff, that's a myth element or whatever. Okay, so let's go to number 5. 5 says identify shifts and explain them. Consider the terms of the Clayman, how good or bad he was. Any story elements, like when does this seem like a myth, when does it start to seem like real life, and power, who's in control, and when does that change, etc. So we have some mini shifts, and we have like the shift or whatever. So the shift, hopefully you can pick it out. We're on the right hand side right now. Let me think of what line this is. Word for it. Line 34. Okay, so Rabbit's trick had backfired. So it's all fun and games, and then boom, backfired, you know? So that's like our main shift or whatever. So Rabbit loses control. He doesn't have the power. Now the Clayman has power. He's ruining the forest. I mean, that's where Rabbit would be living, right? Stuff like that. And he tries to call him back. He's not obeying this time, so we see that part reiterating the shift. Sorry. We have the idea of like the first, like the whole left-hand side. It's fun, 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 all fun for the rabbit. And then boom, deforestation and like all this other stuff, and it's no longer fun. And then the Clayman goes from stealing physical things to important values and customs. Also the pronoun shift. So like we have like rabbit and Clayman and like stuff like that. So this is like parabolic story. Parabolic meaning like parable. If you're probably familiar with the term parable from like Jesus telling parables. Basically, it just means you tell a story and people are supposed to learn from it. It's similar to myth, pretty much the same thing. So, except for like little elements like animals being the characters and stuff like that. So we have this shift here of this story about Rabbit and Clayman, and then all of a sudden and he's like saying he, all the way even through line 25. We're on the the right hand side of the page. And then all of a sudden, in line 28, it says, we lost track of the purpose. We began to forget our songs. We forgot our stories. We could no longer hear our ancestors. And so it no longer becomes this parabolic story. Instead of a parable, it's us. It's our life. It's people. It's everybody else. It's like, this is the moral here. It's like, this is you too, guys. You know, heed the warnings. So you see that going on. So shifts are there. We are on number 6. Theme. So what's the main message? What can you glean from this? So what you don't want to say is something like, oh, the rabbit does whatever, and that's your theme. Because I'm not a rabbit, and I can't learn from that, right? So what we want to do is we want to take kind of a topic here, and don't leave it there because that's just a topic. We want to think of what's the author's opinion on that topic, merge those together. So we have topic plus author's opinion equals theme. And they should be universal. Other people can learn from them in different situations and things like that, right? So I think one of the key things right here is the symbolism of the ear. This is something I didn't really talk about yet. So yeah, the symbolism of Clayman and Rabbit. But the idea that he said he realized that Clayman wouldn't listen, he made a Clayman with no ears. Well, earlier he was listening. He taught him how to do things, and then the Clayman listened. However, here he's no longer listening, and it's probably not with his physical ears, but with his heart, with his empathy. Or even a physical heart either, just with his empathy, right? His compassion. And so, Clayman has no ears of empathy to listen to others, and it hurts, right? And that greed is perpetuating, and those needs aren't being met by the rabbit, and like things like that. We have personification, reiterating that rabbit and clayman could be symbols of colonizers hurting, of just us in general having greed and evil, things like that. We have the idea that when we allow evil and greed to enter our hearts, we can no longer be satisfied. We cannot talk to people across the table, like in line 31. Sometimes we mow down the forest in line 32. We lose our ears, quote unquote, for empathy in line 37. So those kinds of things, those would be parts of me reiterating the theme of the idea that we need empathy, and we allowed evil and greed into our hearts. It's going to grow. We shut out empathy. We no longer can hear the more and more that we heed to greed. That rhymed. Okay, so then for 7, I just want you guys to reflect. Subjective means, remember that it's personal. You guys can say I. You can talk about how you feel about things, stuff like that. You can use opinions. So to give you a little bit of personal reflection for me, if I were to do this, I would probably, let me pick a line or two to talk about. So the idea that in line 16 or 17, Rabbit felt important and powerful, and then Clayman felt important and powerful, and then he's not satisfied, and then that kind of makes it to where he's not listening anymore. And I could say something like, if I were answering number 7, sometimes for me, whenever I start to feel more in control and I'm kind of giving into things that I want to do, I feel important and powerful, and I become satisfied with those things for a time, but then I feel like I'm not satisfied anymore. I want to be I want everything. Even sometimes it's success, right? I want to be the top in this, class, and not just make all the A's on these tests and make the A's on those tests. And then I want to run for student body president. I want to be in this club and that club. And then I have to go to the top schools and everything else. And I have to be working all the time and all these different things. And it's you never sleep and you never calm down. Or maybe even if it's with your friends, how you push their buttons too much and you're never satisfied, or something like that. And you just feel greedy all the time. I need it, I need it, I need it. Sometimes your teacher might help you out a little bit, and then you just kind of depend on her a little bit too much. Or that happened a lot sometimes in my school. Sometimes I see it with students here. Often you guys treat me very well though, so that's good. But just that idea of once you have greed, it's you want everything, and we need to stop. And we need to have empathy. And we need to realize that forests are being mowed down all over the world. We have this idea that we're not listening to our ancestors across the table. Not necessarily our ancestors, but our families, across the table. We're not having these conversations. We're on our phones all the time. We're not heeding the call to be present to the moment and things like that. And to stop that is to put your ears back on. Put your empathy back in your heart and say, help me. I need to stop. I need to listen. Yep, so that'd probably be my reflection. I want to hear yours. What do you guys think? What do you think about this poem? What personal thoughts do you have? Write that down for number 7, and I'd be excited to read it. If you guys need help with anything, let me know for sure. I'm going to be here, darn a little bit on my bed, but I'm just kidding. I just need some rest, and I'll get back in black. Just kidding, I'll just be better. But email me if you have questions with stuff or about things. And if you guys need anything, even if it's nothing pertaining to school, if you're oh my gosh, I need gas money, or I need groceries or whatever, things like that. My family, in 10th grade, my mom was paralyzed. My stepdad died of a heart attack. Crazy stuff happened, and I really relied. My English teacher was there for me all the time. I really relied on my family at school, who just kind of came in and just loved on me. And I want to be that for you guys. So I became a teacher. So email me if you guys have any type of issues. Know that I love you 2 pieces. You're literally my delights. I adore you guys. Sorry for my man voice. Hopefully this helped. Hopefully it wasn't too long. But, yep, that's all I got. Love you guys. Bye.